Hey everybody. I apologize in advance. I don't have scripture prepared for that because I wasn't even planning on recording. I actually just came out here to get some totes and containers because I'm doing a downsizing project. Um, but I've been spending, like the last week and a half, I've had like these three songs on repeat. Um, I've shared them a couple times. Um, and my mind has just been, sticking on certain things, trying to pull things apart. And this morning I kind of had a little bit of well, not a little bit, but an epiphany um, on some of it. And that's why, I'm like a dog with a bone. When my brain knows something's up, it won't let me let go of it until I figure it out. It's a blessing and a curse. Um, I went to the, local Bible study last night. And, we've been doing it was actually the last lesson on the series we've been doing on spiritual warfare. And one of the topics was, identifying the Antichrist or being able to tell the presence of evil. And part of the discussion was how about, every generation has somebody that they think is that person, and then it doesn't come to pass, things go on. One of the questions was, do you think it's good or bad to speculate such things? And I said it's bad. And my reasons were, for one, Jesus says no man will know the day or the hour. It's going to come like a thief in the night. So if we're sitting here trying to figure out, hey, is this person it? That's kind of going against what we were told. Because that would give you an idea of the timeline. And the other reason I gave is because we should not be demonizing each other. Look at the political climate of the world today. And that's a great example of that, of everybody just eyeballing each other with distrust, and we're not where we should be. And what I wish I had added during the group discussion was, that goes against our command. Our command is to love one another. How can you love someone and be suspicious of them? It doesn't work that way. Well, let me correct that, because you can be suspicious if they're doing something shady, but you can't be looking for them to be that way, if you know what I mean. You're not projecting that evil onto them. It has to genuinely come from them. Because, see, I see it a lot, especially in all these political ads that have been driving me nuts. Both of them are saying the same things about each other, in a lot of them. And again, I see that's the projecting of evil onto one another. And I've kind of been, another thing I've been in my head about is, events over the past few months. I am slowly healing, but I'm still working on it. The other week when I went with my nephew to that Geek Fest, that convention, I saw a lot of things that made me think about my ex. But then on the healing journey, I thought, hey, you know what? If she had acted right, she would be here. Instead of getting all sulky in it, and that is a sign that I'm healing. But it's the fact that it comes up in my mind. There's still things that remind me. Just yesterday there was something else, kind of popped up and brought back some memories. But again, the same thing. Like, hey, if she had had an ounce of integrity, it wouldn't be like this. All I asked for was a conversation. And she actively avoided me. And that got me thinking, like I've said before, I do not look like what I've been through, and that is a choice. I see people running around letting something bad that happened to them in their past dictate their bad behavior for the future. And it doesn't work like that. You know, everything is a choice. I can let what I've been through get to me and turn me into that person, or I can choose to be better myself. I can actively pursue and make the choices to make myself rise above what I've been through, rise above what you know, why take the easy way? You know, you miss out on a lot when you take the easy path, or the road more traveled, to flip a thing. Um, Struggle builds your character. And that's kind of been, I mentioned that one here before. I've literally had multiple supervisors in my past say, man, if there's a hard way to do something, you'll find it. And that's true. I do a lot of things the hard way. And we're getting to that because that was another big part of the epiphany. Um, but yeah, because every time I've tried to take a shortcut in my life, it's kind of backfired on me. And I've learned from that, like, okay, well, don't do things the easy way, do things the right way. And it has changed my life for the better, that I've started to think like that. Another one of the things, like I said, having memories of that relationship is, one of the other things I say is, I'm there to lift everybody else up. I can speak life in other people, but nobody does it for me. Nobody returns a prayer. Again, all I asked her for was presence. Be there. Like, that's it. I'm not asking you to save me. I'm just asking you, like, hey, I'm nervous about doing this alone. When I'm trying to rebuild myself. When I was going through dark times. And I never got it. Every time I got to that point where it was like, please, just be here with me, that was every time she backed away. And it wasn't just her. It was also my friend group. Like, everybody wanted to be around. Everybody wanted to hang out and have a good time. When I was being a people pleaser, when I was neglecting myself, when I was doing whatever just to be around people. Tolerating a lot of disrespect and a lot of nonsense. But the minute I struggled, all of a sudden everybody else had something better to do. And I mean, that was across the board. And not that, again, this is not a pity party. I'm getting to a point on this. I cannot say I don't have support. My family is fantastic. We've got that old school family. We come together. We do look out for each other. But again, it's not to say that the support isn't there. It's the fact that I'm coming to realize, like, I mean, that really is a rare gift that I have. That I can use, and I haven't yet met somebody that, has the same gift. That's how rare it is. That ability to just, the only way I can describe it is speak life, but that's like an oversimplification. It's more complicated than that. But anyway, for the sake of discussion. So I'm sitting there thinking about my past and the things I've been through, and the people that have genuinely tried to be there but haven't been able to do anything, and as opposed to the people who chose not to be there. It made me realize two things at once. Right? I chose that fate. I did that to myself because every time, I've said it again, repetition here, I'm putting puzzle pieces together. Every time I walk away from my faith, my life goes downhill. And then when I walk back to my faith, it improves. And for some reason, unbeknownst to me, my hard-headedness, I don't know, multiple times I've come back, I've been going to church, life's been getting good, and then I let something distract me and I quit going. And then, I go down those bad habit paths again, and everything falls apart. And that's what I was doing to myself. I was keeping myself away from the kind of people that could do that for me, that could speak life into me, because that's when it happens, when I'm at church. So that was definitely a self-inflicted thing. Like, I kept myself away from the thing that could have helped me. And the second point of that, not to imply anything, but it was a cool realization to me anyway, is, as a Christian, I look back on Jesus' life, and it was very similar. Like, he was the guy that could lift everybody else up, and then when the time came when he needed somebody, they either bolted or were powerless to do anything to help him. And that's kind of the goal, as a Christian, is to be like Christ, to build that relationship, to come closer, and to act more like the example that he gave. And I thought that was a pretty cool realization. I can reflect on that, that experience, and say, hey, obviously that means God, intended me to be made of sterner stuff. Again, not to imply anything about a connection between Jesus and I, aside from the fact that I am a Christian. But it's cool to have that realization that I have that in common. It was one of those things that kind of, I felt a weight off my shoulders, when I had that realization. It's like, hey, it's all been training. It has been developing me into who I want to be. And who knows, maybe that's why I self-sabotaged in the past, because I knew the end game would be, hey, screw up a lot now so that you can learn these lessons, so later you can put the pieces together and make it better. I don't know. I do have decent foresight. The more I build my discernment, the better my foresight gets. Who knows? It could be tied to that. But that's speculation. That's not what we do around here. But it does make me strive to continue to make change. I'm still fighting a few bad habits that I've had, but again, I've been knocking a lot off in the last few months. It's been, hasn't been easy, but it's been worthwhile. Again, I get more involved. Before, I was such a recluse, a hermit, and I'm not now. Like, I'm actually juggling right now between involvement in two churches. Not that I'm saying I'm trying to, pick one or anything. It's that I'm in the right crowd. I'm with fellow believers, and in both cases, I'm used to being looked at a certain way throughout my life, through other people, in general. And when I'm in church settings, I'm looked at the opposite. And it's very interesting to me, because most people don't take the time or have the level of of understanding. Because again, that saying is very true. You can only meet others as far as you met yourself. And most people don't have that level, of awareness of themselves. But, as a Christian, you are trying to follow the word. You're trying to do right. So that makes you more conscious and aware. So you do know yourself better by going through. If you walk the walk, not just talk the talk. That's the thing. You got to put in the effort. You got to do the work. You can't just show up at church and say, yes, I believe, and that's the end of it. That is not how it works. That's how you can get started. That's okay. If that's what gets you in the door and gets you in position to think about it, that's fine. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying, don't be stagnant. You have to be willing to grow. Always look for growth. I mean, I'm constantly studying. The Bible to get a better knowledge, a better understanding, because the more I apply it, the better my life gets, or the more things I can navigate with relative ease. I'm learning to let go of a lot of things that I've been, stuck on for a while. It's getting a little bit easier the more and more, that I give it attention. I am one of those people now that I do spend a little time every day in the Word. More so lately, because again, I'm working on that writing project. So, although I'm going to take a break from that for a couple days, because now that it's getting colder, rather than come out here to do my writing where I can spread out, I want to make room in my room for, I have a little fold-up desk kind of thing here that I'm going to take in there. That way I can stay, where it's warmer and have room to spread my materials out as I do my writing and research. So the next couple of days, I finally realized, hey, that, and I need to find, one, I want to dress nicer for Sundays. Like I was talking about that in a previous video. That makes me feel good. And it's appropriate to do. I got a lot of compliments, last Sunday. And again, I appreciate it. It's so funny. Like last night when I went to the Bible study, I was getting some compliments, and I appreciate it. I really do, but I'm so unused to it. I get so uncomfortable because I'm not used to it. The rest of the world looks at me like I'm an idiot, or at least that's how they treat me. But not there. They point out, no, you're pretty smart. You pick up on a lot of things. It's where my focus is. The world thinks of worldly things. That's not me. I'm not thinking about going out and getting the bag or having the fancy cars or none of that. I don't care about that stuff. That has never meant anything to me. At the end of the day, I just want to be known as a good person. That's the goal. I want to follow the command, love one another. I want to be known for that. That's where my attention, my focus goes. That's who I choose to be. Again, I'm human. I slip up, but I take all these mistakes and all these trials and tribulations, and I study them. I do let it live rent-free in my head until I figure it out, because that's the point. You got to learn the lesson from it. And I'm finally starting to, again, this whole situation with my ex and the way things went has been one of those things cycling in my head, and now I'm starting to pick out what I was supposed to take from it, so I can keep it from happening again, so I can grow past, because again, I tolerated the behavior that I thought I deserved. I accepted the treatment that I thought, matched me, and it really took that incident to wake me up and hey, dude, you're accepting less than the bare minimum. Literal. The bare minimum is acknowledgement. And I do mean, there were times this person just, literally, I would be standing right in front of her, and would act like I wasn't even there. I couldn't even get that, right? That is the absolute bare minimum for human interaction, is acknowledgement. And her pride, her ego absolutely refused that. Yeah. And that's the kind of people I've surrounded myself with. People of character like that. Again, her thing was she was worried on appearances, status, money, which, don't get me wrong, it is important. You do got to do certain things. Again, life isn't easy. It's not about laziness, right? Because life requires effort. But it's what you put your attention into, I'm not the kind of person that'll just do anything for a buck. If I don't feel like I am doing some kind of good, then it's just not my thing. And it doesn't have to be anything, grandiose. Even if it's something as simple as, I'm great at customer service, because, again, that's that opportunity to meet people and just give that kind word, that small smile that they need to get through their day. To me, that feels worthwhile. And again, a lot of people frown on that. Like, oh, you want to, work in a convenience store or flip burgers? You're like, yeah. If it gives me an opportunity to help people or to interact with them, to spread that love that I'm supposed to carry, I'm all for it. And again, I was letting, in that situation, I was letting people, not just my ex, but my friend circle at the time, project a lot onto me. And I accepted it. I tolerated it. I had that weight on my shoulders. A lot of the issues that I had, my social anxiety, my depression, that came all from projection. Because literally, as soon as I severed that connection, I said, okay, enough is enough. I've had it and I'm walking away. Literally, as soon as I severed that connection with everybody, it all went away. Like that. Like, I am not even kidding. You got to be careful, because it is definitely real. You want to call it a psychological attack, a spiritual attack, whatever. But it is, whatever it is real. I can say that from experience. And now I know the warning signs. I know, hey, if I start feeling this way, start assessing your circle and see what's going on. Before, again, I was a people pleaser. I wanted people around. I wanted people to like me. And I was looking for the wrong, I would take anybody that was willing to give me attention. And I've learned discernment now. Like, I don't want everybody's attention. I want the right kind of people, the people that choose to live like I do. That want better for themselves, that want to do positive things in the world, And I know where that home is, and I just got to stick to it. I can't let myself fall off this time like I usually do. But yeah, those are, again, some of the realizations, reflections, epiphany, however you want to put it. That's what's been going through my head. It's kind of neat how it all comes together, Just pieces fall into place, and then once I figure it out, I know how to keep the ball rolling, because I got it figured out. And that's what I want to do. I want to keep momentum. That's why I paused the writing for a little bit, because the way I was doing it's actually taking me longer, because I'm going back and forth. That, and it's an inconvenience, because, like I said, the colder it gets outside, the more uncomfortable it is in here. Um, Last year I had plastic everywhere. I'm not going through that effort this year. I don't need to because it's just me out here. That and I quit smoking, so that was my primary reason to be out here. So why am I going to go through, again, why am I going to make myself suffer needlessly? So I'm going to take the time. Like I said, I'm doing an organization project right now, trying to downsize. I've got clothes I want to go through. I need to find, some better dress clothes for church. And I was talking last night, again, where I walk a lot. And it's getting dark earlier last night. I didn't even think about it. I dressed all in black and started walking towards Bible study. And one of my neighbors who goes with us stopped and said, "Come on, get in the car." And I did my usual, like, no, I'm getting my exercise. And she's like, "No, you were wearing black. It is nighttime. Get in the car." And I was like, okay. And I do appreciate, again, that's that thing. They're the kind of people that look out for me, like genuinely, versus my old circle. And I love it. I'm very grateful for everybody, But anyway, back to, I have a bright yellow jacket from when I did work at Sunoco, with the reflective stripes on it. So I need to dig that out too, so I can start wearing it for, like I said, those evening walks. So I'm easier to see, so something don't happen to me. But again, that's that thing, that realization that I'm my own blind spot. I needed correction from my tribe. Say, hey, what you're doing isn't the greatest idea. I mean, you know what? You're right about that. And again, that's accountability. That is being open to constructive criticism. Like, hey, how easy was that? And then I go ahead and I understand what I need to do to make the correct changes. It's really not that hard, people. It's really not. People are so afraid to face themselves. I understand it can be scary, but it is so worth it. You can't grow without it. You can't. Again, you can only meet the world as far as you meet yourself. So if you're not willing to dive into the depths of who you are not going to experience all the richness that is in creation. All you're going to see is that surface level stuff. That's why everybody's so miserable. All everybody sees is the bad stuff that's right at the front on top. But if you go deeper, there's good in the world. It's just buried under a bunch of crap. But it's there. But again, if you're not willing to look deeper into things, you'll miss it. Again, I'm my own testimony. The last few months, I was tempted. I almost gave up on myself. I was real close. Just shut down and let it be what it is. Just like everybody else. I could be like them, take the easy path and let it harden my heart and just be done with everything. Just be miserable. I'm like, no. I am worth the effort. Just because nobody else wants to put the effort into me, don't matter. I can put the effort in myself. And that's the other thing, when I say it went like a switch, because that kind of is what happened. I flipped the switch. Instead of pouring everything I had into everybody else, wanting to be liked, right? All that energy, that healing, I lost count of how many times I lifted people up. And that's not speculate. That's them telling me, like, hey, you really helped me with this, or you really did. That's confirmed, It's a gift. And I appreciate it, But I can't focus on it being reciprocated. Is it nice for it to be reciprocated? Yes. But again, I had to get my head straight, to get away from the negative influences. Again, show me your 5 closest friends and I'll show you your future. Yeah, well, my 5 closest friends were not a future I wanted. Again, my ex, she wanted material things from life. And that's not a knock. It's not. It's just, that's how different we were. It was not going to work. And I ignored red flags for a long time. In the back of my head, though, I knew it was heading that way. And ironically, that's how it ended. Like, I flat out told her, like, hey, what you are doing right now is making me feel this way. And if it continues, I'm not going to have a choice. And again, pride and ego acted like I didn't say a word, went ahead and did it anyway, and expected me to be there at her convenience, when she was ready. No, kick rocks. That's not to be uncaring. It's not to be unforgiving. It's recognizing, don't be unequally yoked. Do not let those 5 closest friends drag you down. And she was the absolute front of the line. She was the center of my universe. And that was a disservice I did to myself. Because again, I overlooked all those red flags, all the things that now in hindsight, now that the spell is broken, the rose-colored glasses are off. Again, this isn't a trash talk. We're just 2 different people, and we weren't meant to be. Not like that. The way it would have worked is if I continued the way I was and completely ignored myself and became what they wanted me to be. Like, that's the irony that really hit me the other day. Like, what started this whole thing is when my health declined, right, was when I started this journey, this path to healing, this growth initiative. Because I couldn't do the things that I was used to doing to fit in with everybody, you know what I mean? I couldn't do labor work anymore, and that's pretty much all I'd known. So, I started thinking, like, how can I improve, right? And the people around me were just like, oh man, you got to get yourself together. You got to, get up, go do this, or go do that. And like, that's not an option for me anymore. My ex specifically said, oh, why don't you do, this kind of work, which is like I was doing before. Like, no, that is a strain that my health cannot, unfortunately, it can't tolerate. But I need to find a different way to do it. Again, my gift is out of the box thinking. Like, I understand, like, hey, the same old tricks are not going to work anymore. You got to develop new habits and build new skills. It's not impossible. Don't give up on yourself, but you got to figure it out. And I'm reaching out to all these people around me, like, hey, help me. I feel really daunted. And again, I was around people that could not be there for me like I was for them. Again, not to knock, it's about capacity. Again, they had not, I'm getting off track here, because that's the point I'm getting to is, I wanted to improve myself to be the man that I thought she deserved, and as I became that man, I realized she didn't deserve him. That was my grand epiphany on that. When I say not deserving, right, I mean, again, that reciprocal effort. I'm not saying everybody on this planet deserves to be loved just for the simple fact that they're alive. And I know a lot of people will argue with that statement, and they'll be, oh, well, here's this exception, here's that exception. No. When Jesus spoke it, he did not say any ifs, ands, or buts. There are no exceptions. Again, there's a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. You don't have to reconcile with everybody. You just got to forgive them. You got to treat them right. Right? If they do you wrong and you can't treat them right anymore because of what they did to you, that's fine. We're human. But that means don't put yourself around them to drag yourself down by feeling that way. You know what I'm saying? I know that's kind of a haphazard way. I'm sorry, that's the way my brain's running right now, because I'm trying to put a lot of pieces together. Random went on here. This is longer than I intended it to be. I'm in the middle of a project that I should be working on. But again, I felt moved to, point these things out that I've been thinking about. Don't be afraid to face yourself. Don't be afraid to look through the lens of truth when you look in the mirror. That's one of the big problems in the world right now is people do not have the strength or the courage to do that. And they need to, because it's a lot better when you do. Again, you got to be open to growth, correction, constructive criticism. Now, there's a difference, right, between constructive criticism and just criticism. For example, there was that wave for a while where everybody said all these movies, well, this is woke, this is woke. All right, well, explain why you feel that way. Don't just use your buzzword and say that's what it is. Give a real, and there were some critics that did do that, and they were the ones that, even if I didn't agree with them, I respected because they did that. Then you got people that, again, say, life sucks, it's miserable. Okay, well, what are you going to do to change it? You can't just sit there and say life sucks and expect it to change. Again, I can say that. I used to be one of those people. I learned. Your circumstances, your life outside of you cannot change until you change what is in you. Whatever is in you that's keeping you from having the things you want externally, you got to fix it, or otherwise you'll never have those things. I know some people say it's garbage advice, but it is absolute truth. You cannot love others properly. Not to say you can't do it, but you cannot do it properly until you have learned to love yourself. That's just a fact of the matter. If you're unhappy with yourself, we have a tendency to project. So the people closest to us get to feel the brunt of how we feel about ourselves. So if we don't get in here and fix that stuff, then that's how it's going to be. And who wants to deal with that? I certainly don't. Let me tell you, the more I've grown, the more I relish my peace. If you can get over a need to be a people pleaser, the freedom of not worrying what other people think or trying to get them to like you, very liberating. But you have to be comfortable with your authentic self. That's the key there, authentic. You have to walk in truth. You have to be who you truly are, not build an image of who you think the world wants you to be. But on the flip side of that, again, you got to build that discernment. There are places that you do have to go. There's some things that you do not compromise on, and there are things that you should compromise on. But again, until you learn that level of discernment to tell one from the other, you're going to struggle. And you only learn that by doing the work, having the experience, facing the fears. Once you face your fears, whole different ballgame. Again, not to harp on it, but that situation with my ex, at the time, that was my absolute biggest fear, was losing her. And it happened. And I survived it. Not only did I survive it, but I feel like I'm thriving now. Again, looking back, hindsight being 2020, all that energy that I should have been putting into myself to build myself back up, I was putting into her. And we see from the ending of things, it was not appreciated. So I pull it back and I give it to somebody who appreciates it, myself. And when I find the right one, I'll pass it on to them too. But I know better now. People don't think the way I do. People, not everybody has good intentions. Not everybody has empathy. Not everybody can think outside of themselves. But that's the choices they make, because they haven't faced themselves to see what's right and what's wrong and correct where necessary. They just get in their comfortable rhythms. This is what I like. This is who I am. This is what I'm going to be. Hey, you got free will. By all means, do you, boo. But don't expect people to just accept it and tolerate it. If you're not willing to grow for yourself, don't expect people to chain themselves to you and, stop their own growth just to stay around. That's one of the most detrimental things you can do to yourself. That's why, biblically it says, do not get with the wrong partner. Do not be unequally yoked, because that's what happens. Instead of you elevating, they drag you down. You have to have that compatibility. You have to be evenly matched. That's what equally yoked is. You have to want the same things. And again, my red flag, my blind spot was not realizing we didn't want the same things. Some things she told me she did want, but the difference between words and actions are like, no, you didn't want that. And that's what boggles my mind, Again, it's back to what I was talking about the other day. Why lie? Why lie to somebody? Why tell somebody what you think they want to hear instead of being your authentic self? Because you can meet in the middle that way, right? If somebody's lying to you, how can they expect earnest results from that? If you're lying to somebody else, how can you expect an earnest result from that? Doesn't make any sense. Be your real self. Be honest with yourself. And there's a difference between self-love and selfishness, right? Self-love means you do make yourself a priority, in the sense that you don't let people run you into the ground trying to please them, Selfishness is when you do everything solely for your own benefit and don't matter how much it hurts somebody else. That's one of the lessons I had to learn, I got to see the example of that in this last relationship. That's what opened my eyes to it. That's what helped me grow. I asked for accountability. The closest thing I got to accountability is, oh, I'm sorry, I was afraid of what you'd say if I talked to you. Selfishness. If you had had an ounce of integrity and just a little bit of courage, you could have had your cake and eat it too. You could have done what you wanted to do and come back and things would have been the way you had left them. But again, that pride and ego, And some things you just can't come back from. Obviously, I believe people can change. I'm a great example of that. But again, I also understand not everybody, thinks like me, makes the choices that I make. And that's cool, Again, you want diversity. You want to share. You don't want your life to be an echo chamber. You want to have things in common with your neighbors. That's what community is. Common, community. See how those words? Yeah, okay. Not to be confused with communism. And that's another one of the dirty tricks. The other day I was saying that's why they call it spelling. Because words are spells. And that's what they've done. They've taken the word community, and when anyone describes community, they think communism. And they're like, nope, that's no good. We can't do that. That's one of the ways they trick you. You associate certain words with certain things, and they become your triggers. And then, where you don't self-reflect, to get over those triggers, you let them rule your life. You react in places where no reaction is the best reaction. That is definitely rampant. How many things are going where somebody could just, look, this conversation is going nowhere between the two of us. You go your way, I go mine. We'll go back to our, again, not echo chambers, but to people that are willing to listen. That are listen to understand, not listen to respond. I can't stand those kind of people. I can't be around them. That's one of the reasons I, don't have a big social circle anymore. Anyway, this is like way longer than I planned, but I'm just kind of letting everything flow, all these thoughts, all these ideas, as I sort through them myself. But I want to get back to my project. I want to get busy. I really need to get this writing project done. I want to. And I think it's important. I want to share it. I think some people need it. So that's why I want to make it my focus. But again, I have to do chain of events, certain order, which was another lesson from Bible study last night, by the way. So yeah, I'm going to get to what I got to get to. But I just want to give you guys some food for thought. Again, as I put the pieces together, I will share them with you. And hopefully, when people find what I'm doing here, it'll help them grow, the way I have. The peace that I've found. I know some people from the outside looking like, he can't possibly be happy like that. Like, yeah, I can. I assure you, I'm not making it up. I'm not putting on a front. I am who I say I am. I mean, yes, again, like I said, sometimes something gets stuck up here. I'm like a dog with a bone. I got to figure it out. I have to. That saying, make it make sense, I have to. If it doesn't make sense, I cannot let it go. That's probably going to be my downfall, to be honest, but yeah. Anywho, just some things to think about. As usual, keep taking care of yourself. Try and help take care of each other where you can, right? We're in a world where we got to look out for each other. We have to. This individualistic nature, again, that's why everybody's giving off those narcissist vibes, because it's all that independent, that it's got to be about me mentality. I got to look out for myself. Screw anybody else. Doesn't matter who I have to step on as long as I'm good. We have to reject that. That is the main reason this world is as bad as it is right now. I will stand on that. That's the hill I'll die on. We got to get past that stuff. Too many people, are more worried about feeding their ego rather than starving it. Having humility. Because that ego, it'll wreck your life. It absolutely will. That's the irony, too. My level of tolerance for certain, some people have said, like, hey, you'll cut off your nose to spite your face. And from outside views, I could see where they would think that. But no, it's having standards. It's having integrity. This is what I'll accept, this is what I'll tolerate, and this is what I won't. But then you have people that really will, just to be contrarian, spiteful. They really will, cut their nose off to spite their face, like literally. In some cases. Again, that's where that gift of discernment comes in. That gift of discernment grows as you study. For me, as I study God's Word, the Bible, right? I understand the principles in it, and I apply those principles, and then that builds my discernment, and I know better, one, of what's going on with the people around me, because I know what to look for, and I know better how to conduct myself. I can see better where I'm falling short. That where, again, like last night, it makes me more open to correction, like things that I don't think about. If my friends point it out, I can be like, you're right about that. I'm sorry, I just keep babbling on. I'm going to let this go. But I said the lines. I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.